Hey, what's up everyone? So I have a small update here to MVP ColorLogic and has everything to do with all of these helper actions. And you can see that at least the way I set them up in button mode, okay, they all have a plus symbol, meaning that you add them, if you will, after, not necessarily after you're done, but they always put themselves on top of your layer stack because that's kind of what they're for, finalizing. So in some ways they're like the finalizer actions, but they're the helper ones that come with Logic, or rather ColorLogic, and that will be sent to all our ColorLogic customers and included in future purchases, of course. So let's see what the heck we're talking about. Well, ColorLogic, of course, comes with all sorts of different, color grades that sort of match their background color here in button mode. I say sort of because I want to make sure that everybody realizes that just because you tap MVP Soft Machine and it's blue, it doesn't mean that it's going to be blue. It could be bluish. You could send it in the blue direction, but it depends on the base image. It depends on your image, what it'll look like. But the idea, the intent was blue. Now, I don't want blue on this, so I'm going to choose some of these orange ones. Let's go with Element, see what that does. Okay, it kind of has that hazy sort of golden hour vibe, which I don't mind. I'm going to keep that there and work with that. Let's see, I add something else on top of it. How about MVP Ping? Very, very subtle. It just seems to kind of soften up the shadows a little bit, but I'm going to take down the opacity of that. Super, super subtle. But let's say now, as you can see, I've gotten a look of some kind. We can play with it, but let's make some choices. How about now that we have a grade, let's do some finalization things like these right here, okay? So all these gray ones are going to be our finalization actions, they're helper actions that do something on top. So let's say, for example, highlight glow, right? That's going to add a glow to all the brighter areas. And I don't really see that here. I don't want her shirt to glow necessarily. Okay, and we showed that in the previous one, previous examples, different videos and whatnot. How about linear contrast? If you tap that, it immediately adds a linear contrast on top, meaning that's kind of sort of maximize the dark and the high and the light, of your image. See that? So it went from soft to now more true contrast. It's almost like doing an auto contrast via a gradient map. Okay. And that works kind of cool. I don't mind that so much, though. It added more contrast than I wanted. So I'm going to change the opacity to about 60%. Cool. I like that. Now, let's say I want her shirt to be a little bit more. So I'm going to go to highlight, pop, medium. I'm going to try medium. Run that. Let it pop up to the top layer. Sure enough, there it is. Off and on. You see that? So it creates a brighter area, using curves, of course, and blend if to kind of target the brighter luminosities. And now we have a little bit of brightness in the shirt, which I don't mind. I think that looks really, really cool. But there's an added bonus to this whole demonstration. If I go to my channels, window menu channels, I have also run MVP mask logic to have that. This was during the workflow, and I have it here ready to go in case I want to do other things, right? Great for finalizing your image, making fast changes, etc., etc. So those actions, I'm going to go ahead and tuck away the channels because those actions are down here and they utilize those channels, right? So let's say I'm doing a grade, I add some contrast, it's going okay, but I feel like I've lost the eyes. I need the eyes to be brighter. Well, what can I do? A couple different things. I can just simply tap on eyes over here. Boop, and now I have the selection of eyes because that resides in a channel. It's already been created and I can pull it instantly. Let's go to curves. I'm going to go ahead and make it a luminosity blend mode. And then I can pull my curves up and brighten the eyes a little bit. Okay, so I've got that kind of going on. I can even put that one below the color grade just to make sure that I have the order that I like. A little bit strong. So we're going to put that down to like a 50%. So off and on, extremely subtle, but we've sort of brightened the eyes a little bit there. So we've gone from this to this. Now we go back up. You see how we can kind of mix and match and use these different action sets to accomplish different things without spending too much time noodling with detailed masks or, selection areas or anything like that. We can, once we get all the detailed work done, like skin work and other modifications or whatever removals and things you want to do, then you can jump right into quick finalization, make some fast decisions. So I have a little bit of a linear contrast. I have a highlight pop on top of that. How about a crush shadows heavy? Let's do heavy because we're on a video. I'd like to make sure you guys can see them. And it always adds it on top, which is kind of the nature of it, but you can move it and I recommend that you do. So if I move it lower, you see how now it went from off to on. Very, very subtle, but we have a crushed shadows feel on the shadows. And if I'm still not 100% satisfied, maybe I pull ping out of there. I don't think ping was sort of working for me. Element is 100%. We're going to leave it at that. What happens if I add distant echo? Let's see what happens there. I don't like distant echo. Let's delete that one. I'm going to scroll down. Let's add heat wave. See what that one does? Ooh, it's super, super strong. Okay, that's kind of cool. All right, so now we're getting somewhere here. Let's say I like this direction, but I'm concerned about the saturation, right? For example, so I can say mute saturated areas. Tap that, and that's another helper action that's going to create a luminosity mask. Excuse me, it's going to create a saturation mask. It's going to create a saturation mask using not luminosity data. That's where my brain got cross-wired. And then it's going to reduce the saturation of those really strong saturated areas. So off and on. See that? It keeps our color grade, but it takes the subtlety down. This is in case we like everything that's happening, but we needed a little less of everything, right? It's not an arbitrary reduction of saturation. We're using vibrance and saturation, mostly vibrance and a little bit of saturation, okay? And we're using, again, a saturation mask, which is what that looks like, which favors and focuses on the saturated areas, just a smarter way. On top of that, it uses color blend mode, by the way, which makes those changes very, very subtle. Now, the idea, of course, that you can and should change this. So, you know, if you turn it off, you see that the saturation is back to where it was. Turn it on, it's a little more muted, but you have your sliders, you have opacity, make the changes as you want. So I'm gonna leave it alone right there. So let's say I'm gonna try now, how about a compression medium? Compression in my world, I usually run it with a levels. And what that does is it brings the output levels up from the shadows and down from the highlights, minimizing how bright and how dark an image can be. It's literally compression because of the top layer most of the time. And because of that, nothing can end up brighter than that range or darker than that range. And that's what I call compression. I leverage that quite a bit. Now with compression, the linear contrast could probably stand to be a little stronger. I'm going to put it 80%. Not bad. Very, very subtle. What happens at 100%? Okay, that doesn't look too bad. Now I'm kind of feeling like the color's a little strong, but I'm going to get to it. Eyes are popping okay, but I feel like it's too dark on top of the frame where her face is and too bright at the bottom. I want to change the focus a little bit. So I have this down here, which is linear gradient vertical. Tap that. And what that does is sets up a gradient from black to white, okay, in soft light blend mode, and then you can change the opacity. As you can see, if I go off and on, you see how it changes the focus. It's brighter up top. I'm going to move it down once again below the color in my case. Oops, I actually put it, there we go, cool. Now, because I wanted to make the change and then get color graded, not make changes to the color grade. Let's go ahead and, it's at 25% default. Let's make it 15%. Okay, so off and on. You see that? A simple vertical grade or horizontal one can be the most powerful thing to change the focus and your attention in an image, right? So there's nothing wrong with this. This is not the original, but this is what I was working with. But I wanted the attention to be a little more on her face and less on her outfit. So I changed the grade. Now the image is a little more even. Now let's talk about the color. It looks a little bit strong. I kind of feel like that's too much. On heat wave, I'm going to take that down to like a 50%. I don't mind that so much. Okay, linear contrast, it's maxed out, and that's fine. That's no big deal. We can kind of leave that there. We can also change the order of things too. Like if we feel like linear contrast needs to be on top of everything, we can try that. Can move it below. Very, very subtle differences. I don't mind it though. I'm going to leave the crushed shadows kind of where it is. Okay, so I don't mind that so much. I think that's working. Let's see. Off and on. See that? So between, we had a curves brightening with the mask logic, because we have that all tucked away in the channels. We have mask logic masks in the channels. We can brighten the eyes real quick. We can add the luma gradient, so we can kind of change that focus. We have two color grading layers. We have a crushed shadows, a linear contrast, a highlight popper. So we have off and on, and then overall we're reducing the saturated areas smartly and very subtly, just to make them not quite as strong, and then we're compressing the whole thing. And I did that just by tapping actions, and at any moment I can do all manner of things. Let's say I come here and I go, you know what, let's go to mask logic here and give me the background. Cool. And on the background, I'm going to come down here below everything, and I'm going to choose solid color, and I'm going to choose black. Cool. And then I'm going to put it at 10%. Okay. And now off and on, I've created a more subdued background. Just like that, no big deal. It's perfect, right? In terms of creating the attention that I want. So look what I've done. From off, beautiful shot, not out of camera. It's been edited, okay? Color corrected. And now we're starting to create some kind of vintage, warm, dusky, golden hour vibe. And the color, you can go back and forth on whatever sounds good to you on the color. Maybe we'll take this one off and it's super, super subtle. Or maybe we just take down the opacity even more. How about 30%. That's super, super subtle. And you can keep stacking all of these colors and do all of these different things on it, and also keep using your finalization actions. Do you need 5 or 6 every time? I don't know. That's up to you. But you can use them quickly, instantly. In fact, I'll show you real quick. I'm going to go ahead and delete all of this stuff that I've done, and we're going to start over. So let's see here. Let's go for like a blue tone. Let's go for clarity. really strong. Let's go for decibel on the greens. Okay, something like that. We're just gonna kind of play with that for the moment. And then I want to do, how about, let's go for a highlight pop medium again, because I kind of like what it did to her shirt and everything else. Cool. Then we're going to go down to Mask Logic and we're going to choose the eyes highlights. How about that? Eyes highlights. Now we'll go to curves, put it on luminosity blend mode, and we can brighten that. Very, very subtle. Even though I'm doing it maximum like that, I'm really powerful. Now it doesn't brighten the dark part of her eyes, and it just looks a little more natural, I think, on the brightening. Let's go back up to our finalization. How about we're going to do the grad again, because I think that's really necessary. But I'm going to go once again, pull it down to below the color. I feel like it's smoother that way because that's a corrective thing. Maybe make it 15% like I did again. Cool, cool, cool. And then maybe we're going to do, how about some grain? We're going to add some grain medium. Okay, let that pop up to the top and kind of process all those noise and blur layers to kind of create the noise. There it is. You can't see that very well in the video, I know, but there it is, the noise layer. Okay. In fact, let me go ahead and double click on the magnifying glass, and that should help see our detailed noise. Okay, there it is. So we have some beautiful grain noise. Here's the whole thing. There's the original, and then there is the gray that we've come up with. Okay, zoom out just a bit. All right, so let's say those blues are really, really strong. As much as I like them, I'm going to mute the saturated areas again. And again, these are always going to pop up in the top of the layer stack, but I encourage you to move them around because you never know where they can be useful for you and where they might look better. So I'm going to put this, of course, on top of the color grading layers. Oops, I put it into it. Didn't mean to do that. So let's try that again. We're going to put it there. Oh, you know what? I put it after the pop highlights, and that's okay. I'm not going to worry about it. So now we're reducing the overall saturation of the saturated areas very, very subtly, but just enough to mute it. And the whole thing feels like, it could be brighter or darker. Those kind of general changes you can do with normal tools, right? So you can come over here and just say, oh, you know what? Let's do a curves and let's put it on luminosity blend mode, because that's usually what I do when I'm making sort of, exposure changes, and then brighten a bit, There you go. And now I've got that little thing, and I can change the opacity of that. Maybe 40, maybe 25. How's that? Okay, so now we have a blue tone. We just went from this to this, took it in a completely different direction. Like I said, with the highlight popper, we're muting the saturated areas that were created by the color layers. Even though I liked them, I wanted to mute them, and we had some grain noise. You see how fast all of that works. Now, another thing too, if you were here creating simple things like you choose stereo, which is, I happen to know that one's really strong, like a 50% opacity on that one, and then go lo-fi, I don't know, let's just see, cool, and go like a 35% there. And then we come here and we, let's say soft shadows medium. Excellent. That's going to soften up those shadows a little strong, so I'm going to scale it back. You see how that works? You choose medium, light, or heavy, whatever you think you might want, and then you adjust opacity. That way you can have more granular change. You're not subject to just light, medium, heavy, or extra. You can change in between. Let's do that Lumigrad that I was working with a minute ago because I felt like that was working for the shot, I should mean. Okay. Again, strong, but I'm going to put it below the color. Okay. Make it about 15%. Something like that. Cool. Now, here's what's interesting. All these layers here, because none of them are using specific masks or any type of raster information, I can drag and drop that to another image of the same set. Just drag and drop once I create these looks. See how fast it is. That's the entire idea between ColorLogic and everything that's here in the channels for Mask Logic. All this stuff can happen quickly. And I know some people have told me, it's a lot of actions, Nino. I know it's a lot of actions, but there's a couple of things that's cool about that. You can delete the ones that you find you never use. You're not stuck to a UI of a panel of buttons that you don't care about. You can delete the ones you never use. You're like, you know what? I hate every time I click on electric. I hate it. Done. You just delete it. You just make sure you're out of button mode. Out of button mode, and then just delete what you don't want, or install only what you want. If you only want warm tones or whatever. Same exact story with Mask Logic. You can just keep what you want or don't want. You'll learn about it as you use it more and more and more. Secondly, on my side of things, guys, the fact that it's an action, all these are actions, allows me to make changes quickly, like this set of helper actions for ColorLogic. I've updated it. I've pushed it out. That's the beauty of working with actions. They're not just, click and you get a color grade. Yeah, that's what ColorLogic seems to be, but there's so many more tools that are available to you. In fact, I'm going to show you a couple of them real quick, just so you'll know. We have the shadow booster, right? That's literally going to deepen your shadows. In fact, let me go ahead and close the channels out before I start showing you some of this. There we go. So that adds a little bit of shadows, real simple, real subtle, kind of wake up an image. By the way, speaking of wake up, let me go ahead and just ruin this one real quick. Let's say you have an image that's super soft like that, right? And maybe it's not because you did it digitally, but because it came out of the camera that way. That's where linear contrast comes in. When you tap in linear contrast, it'll wake up a soft shot really, really quick. And that's what I love about it. Boom, boom, can kind of wake it up. And you can wake it up even further if you need to. Highlight pop medium. We can go shadow boost medium. And you see what we're doing. We're creating, we're bringing that contrast that the shot initially didn't have just with clicking buttons, because these are the methods that I would use if I wanted to do that sort of effect, right? And even if I did these effects first, I can go pull a color. Let's put out frizzle. Let's see what happens with frizzle. I'm going to bring it down, change it to like a 20% opacity, maybe 25. And there we go. I've got a color grade. Let's say this was my original image, super soft, not very saturated. Now I've got a deep image with lots of contrast and a slight color grade. Who knows what different directions we can take it? And that is the entire point of ColorLogic, and coupled with Mass Logic, who knows what sort of changes you can make here, like I did to the background and her eyes. So check that out. Links are below so you can see what these different products do. Leave comments with questions. Always happy to answer, or drop me an email, nbp@ninobatista.com.